Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So today we're going to be talking about the new Voiceless Voice Archetype. The day this video is going out, the pack with this deck just released, but I am recording it the day before, just to kind of get a little bit of a primer in for the deck, and mostly to answer the question I think a lot of people are wondering is, how good is this deck going to be in Master Duel? We're not only going to be reading all of the individual cards to get an idea of what the deck does, but I also want to look at some of the OCG's tournament results to kind of get a bit of an indicator of maybe how good exactly this deck is going to be in Master Duel. So I'm not going to waste any time here. We're just going to go right on in and start taking a look at some of these here cards. I think one of these cards, I believe it's one of the ritual monsters, was actually follow-up support, so I don't know for sure at the time of recording this if it is going to be included in the secret pack, but I'm going to operate right now under the assumption that it will be. So we're just going to review all of the Voiceless Voice cards here. Alright, we're going to start off with Lo, the Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. This is a level 1 light fairy effect monster with 50 attack points, that's something you see too often, as well as 2,050 defense points. Effect says, if you ritual summon exactly one light ritual monster, warrior, or dragon with a card effect that requires use of monsters, this card can be used as the entire tribute. You can only use each of the following effects of Lo, the Prayers of the Voiceless Voice once per turn. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can place one Voiceless Voice continuous spell or trap card from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone. If a light ritual monster, warrior, or dragon is special summoned to your field while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card. I mean, yeah, this kind of seems to be the cornerstone of the archetype in a lot of ways. It is looking like it's going to be primarily how we ritual summon out all of our stuff, because we can use this for the entire ritual tribute. On the top of that, when it's summoned, we can place our continuous spell and trap zones or cards. I think we have 2 of each of those from our deck directly face up into the zone. And this can also special itself from the graveyard while we have our ritual monster in place. So I mean, that all seems honestly very straightforward to me. I think that's one thing that you're going to find about Voiceless Voice as we go into the deck here, is that in terms of both what the cards do and how the deck plays, it's all pretty straightforward, which is very nice. So, alright, we do have a couple of more main deck monsters that we're going to take a look at here. Whoops. There we go. Saphira, Dragon Queen of the Voiceless Voice, says you can... sorry, let me read the stats first. Is a light level 6 dragon with 2,500 attack, 2,400 defense. The effect says you can discard this card, send one ritual spell from your deck to the graveyard. Then you can add one light ritual monster, warrior, or dragon from your deck to your hand. You can banish this card from your graveyard. Ritual summon one light ritual monster, warrior, or dragon from your hand by attributing monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster. You can only use each effect of Saphira once per turn. Alright, so another fairly straightforward card, honestly. You discard this and then mill a spell, you get to add a ritual monster, and then you can banish this from the graveyard to then, well, summon said monster. So, that is actually kind of interesting to put the ritual summon effect onto the graveyard effect of a main deck monster. I do think that's kind of neat, especially one that discards itself. What's kind of interesting, though, is that some archetypes that are focused on rituals will, like, not even use spells. They'll kind of just, like, use other means of ritual summoning stuff, but given that part of the effect is to send a ritual spell from the deck to the graveyard, it does seem like we are going to have a ritual spell. I think we do here, but I guess we'll keep reading and see what we got. Sorvis, Dragon Sage of the Voiceless Voice, going to be our next card here. This is a light level 7 dragon with 2,600 attack and 2,800 defense points. That says you can special summon this card from your hand by shuffling 2 spells from your hand and or graveyard into the deck, including a ritual spell. You can only special summon Sorvis, Dragon Sage of the Voiceless Voice once per turn this way. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can return this card from the field to the hand. Special summon one light ritual monster, warrior, or dragon from your hand or deck, but shuffle it into the deck during the end phase of the next turn. You can only use this effect of Sorvis once per turn. Okay. So this one actually seems a little less straightforward than the other couple of cards that we've seen so far. So it can summon itself by shuffling spells back. The other, including ritual spell, the other one we just read, Saphira, mills ritual spells, so that's pretty good. Sets that up, part of it anyway. And then when your opponent activates a card or effect, you bounce this back to your hand and then summon a light ritual monster. That's not treated as a ritual summon. I don't know if that's going to matter. It will if our ritual monsters have an effect that say when this card is ritual summoned, or if they say this ritual summoned card, blah, 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 then that'll matter. But I guess we'll have to see here in a moment. So this one I'm a little less sure of. I think this is probably the first one where I think I'd have to see more of the archetype in order to give a fair evaluation. I have glanced at some deck lists, by the way. I'm not going into this like completely blind. I vaguely know what the end board looks like. I've seen some lists, so this is my first, not my first time, but this is one of my first times really going through and actually reading all of the effects of every single one of these cards. It's certainly my first time sitting and doing it out loud, which you'd be surprised how much a difference reading something out loud makes as far as like your ability to remember it. But anyway. Alright, going into our ritual monsters. So this one I think, yeah, because this was in Legacy of Destruction. I think all the other Voiceless Voice cards were in Phantom Nightmare. So this Saphira here, I guess, might not be in the selection pack, but I am going to hedge and guess that she probably will be, but if not, I guess we'll have to just wait for her later. I guess it could be one of those, like, Rescue Ace Pearly situations where they have one card that's missing for quite a while. But anyway. Saphira, Divine Dragon of the Voiceless Voice, is a level 7 light dragon ritual with 2550 attack and 2450 defense. You can ritual summon this card with Blessing of the Voiceless Voice. If this card is ritual summoned while you have low the prayers of the Voiceless Voice on your field or in your graveyard, you can draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card. When an attack is declared involving a light ritual monster, warrior, or dragon, you can discard 1 random card from your opponent's hand. During your opponent's end phase, you can add 1 light monster from your graveyard to the hand. You can only use each effect of Saphira once per turn. This one, I don't know how I really feel about these effects. This is one of those cards where, like, the effects are all, like, okay, but I don't know, like, that putting a bunch of okay effects that don't really have anything to do with each other on the same card necessarily makes it a good card, right? Like, the draw 2 discard one is nice when this is summoned, and I mean, you know, low is pretty much always going to be on the field or graveyard either way, so that's pretty much a guarantee that you're probably always going to get that effect off, because, again, you're probably using low as your entire material for this summon. Discarding a random card from your opponent's hand is not a bad effect, but being tied to battle is kind of what makes that awkward. It does also discard it, so that means it can potentially send it to the graveyard, which your opponent might want. If it's like a worst case scenario, it could be like Dark Worlds, which specifically want to be discarded, and that would be pretty good for them. But I mean, overall, it's definitely going to be more beneficial than a harmful effect. But again, being tied to battle is a little bit awkward. Then during your opponent's end phase, you can add a light monster from your graveyard to your hand. This effect is fine too. It's during the opponent's end phase, which is again not ideal timing for an effect like this, but at the same time, during your opponent's end phase isn't a bad time necessarily, because then you could start adding cards back for follow-up plays. That does, though, kind of assume that this card that doesn't have any negates or inherent protection is going to survive through to your opponent's turn, so that might be a bit of an ask. Maybe, depending on, maybe there'll be some other cards that can help us out with that kind of aspect of it, but I don't know. And it's interesting because usually if an archetype gets like 1 follow-up support card, it's usually a Rescue Ace or Pearly situation where it's like really great. But this one I feel like is like, it's not horrible. It's just kind of like there, you know? It does things. The things it does are useful sometimes. But is that enough to actually get you to want to play a copy of this card in your deck? I'm not 100% sure, so. Alright, got our other ritual monster for this archetype. The big one, Skull Guardian, Protector of the Voiceless Voice. You can ritual summon, stats first. Level 7 Light Warrior Ritual with 2050 attack and 2500 defense. You can ritual summon this card with Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. Gains 2050 attack while you have low the Prayers of the Voiceless Voice on your field or in your graveyard. You can only use each of the following effects of Skull Guardian, Protector of the Voiceless Voice once per turn. If this card is ritual summon, you can add one Voiceless Voice monster or one ritual monster, warrior or dragon, from your deck to your hand. When your opponent activates a card or effect while you control low, the prayer is the Voiceless Voice, quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Alright, now we're talking. Now this is a ritual monster that is absolutely worth summoning, I think much more than the Saphira. So, whereas the Saphira got to, draw 2, discard 1, if you had low in the field or in your graveyard, this one gains 2050 attack, doubling it to 4,100. And then additionally, if you control low, which is not hard because remember that low will special summon herself once you ritual summon this, then you get an Omni Negate with a Destroy. So this is going to be kind of like the main piece of the Voiceless Voice end board here, right? And again, not hard to see why. Big monster, Omni Negate, not hard to fulfill those conditions. Oh, and it's got the search too, lest we forget. One of the cool things too is that this not only searches a Voiceless Voice monster, but it can also grab any ritual warrior or dragon. So the name Sorvis that we saw earlier might have looked a little bit familiar. There is a ritual monster Sorvis that's pretty generic that you actually kind of want to play with this deck because it can be discarded from your hand to negate an effect that targets a card you control. So Skull Guardian not only has its own Omni Negate effect while you control low, but you could also use this to search not the Voiceless Voice effect monster Sorvis, but generic ritual monster Sorvis to effectively give this some target protection as well. So again, yeah, very, very easy to see why the deck wants to end on this card. Big monster that can potentially protect itself multiple ways, and they're not particularly difficult ways to fulfill. So I think this is also the confirmed UR, so which again makes sense because this is pretty much the face of the Voiceless Voice archetype. And for those who might be a little bit observant, you will note that yes, Skull Guardian is an old vanilla ritual monster that's been retrained into the Voiceless Voice main boss here. Okay, so that's all of the monsters. We do still have those spells and trap cards to take a look at here. Okay, yes, this archetype does have a ritual spell. Duh, I think I knew that. Anyway, Prayers of the Voiceless Voice. Well, we saw it mentioned on a couple of the, well, I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember if that was going to be one of the continuous spells that happened to ritual summon or if there was a separate ritual spell. Anyway, this is a ritual spell that says this card can be used to ritual summon any light ritual monster. You must also tribute light monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster. If a face-up light ritual monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect, except during the damage step, you can banish this card from your graveyard. Special summon one Sorvis, the Ancient and Ascended, Saphira, Queen of Dragons, or Skull Guardian, Protector of the Voiceless Voice from your hand or deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. Can only use this effect once per turn. Okay, so yeah, I mentioned Sorvis earlier. I didn't realize it was straight up part of the archetype, but this is the one I was talking about earlier. Yeah, so the generic ritual card. So this can be searched off of the Skull Guardian, right? And it's got this effect, yeah. Quick effect, you can discard this card, or sorry, when your opponent activates a card effect that targets a monster you control, you can discard this card, quick effect, negate the activation. So that's pretty cool. And then it also mentions Saphira, Queen of Dragons. I'm like vaguely familiar with this card. Ritual summon with Hymn of Light. During the end phase, this is ritual summoned, or if a light monster sent from the hand direct to the graveyard, will discard it from the field, activate one of the following effects. Draw 2, discard 1, discard a random card. Oh, okay, so that's why Voiceless Voice Saphira does what she does, because it's a reference to original Saphira. I think, much like Voiceless Voice Saphira, I would not play original Saphira probably in a Voiceless Voice deck. But again, original Sorvis, this is actually a good card to play in this deck because of the, again, the target protection effect. And the on-board effect is actually not bad either. Being able to bounce this card to negate and banish the special summons of opponent's monsters. I could see a world where I'm even ritual summoning this in Voiceless Voice potentially. Again, original Saphira and also Voiceless Voice Saphira are both kind of like, to be honest. I think Voiceless Voice Saphira is definitely better than original Saphira, so. And that's, if a face-up light ritual monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect. Okay. You banish this and you can just summon one of those from your hand or deck. That's actually pretty cool. It's a very good graveyard effect, so. Alright, we already talked about those two. Alright. Continuous spell card, Barrier of the Voiceless Voice. While you control Low, the Prayers of the Voiceless Voice, and a Light Ritual monster, your opponent's monsters can only target ritual monsters for attacks. Also, your opponent cannot target light ritual or light monsters, period, you control with card effects. During your main phase, you can add one Voiceless Voice or one Skull Guardian ritual monster from your deck to your hand, except Barrier of the Voiceless Voice. You can only use this effect of Barrier once per turn. So, this is a card that you're probably going to want to have in play alongside of your Low and Skull Guardian, right? Because it'll not only prevent your Low from being battled over, which would very easily out your Omni Negate and then, you know, make your Skull Guardian only have 20-50 attack, but it does actually also give more target protection. So aside from Saurvis, this archetype seems to have its own form of in archetype target protection. Also, being able to search is really good. You could just start with, I think actually the combo for line for this deck starts with Low into searching this and then using this to grab like Skull Guardian or something. I don't know. I think we'll read the combo line at some point later on in this video, but definitely easy to see how this is an important card for the deck. Blessing of the Voiceless Voice, got another continuous spell card here that says you can target one of your Voiceless Voice cards that is banished or in your graveyard except Blessing of the Voiceless Voice, add it to your hand. If a non-ritual monster is normal or special summoned to face up, except during the damage step, you can ritual summon one light ritual monster, warrior or dragon, from your hand by attributing monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal or exceed the levels of that ritual monster, and if you do, it cannot be destroyed by battle. You can only use each effect of Blessing of the Voiceless Voice once per turn. This card seems not nearly as great. I don't know, it's just like, yeah, this does potentially let you ritual summon during your opponent's turn, but you can also just cheat stuff out during your opponent's turn with main deck, the Voiceless Voice version of Saurvis. Adding your banished Voiceless Voice cards from graveyard to hand, or, yeah, from banished or graveyard to your hand, rather, is like a fine effect, but it's like you don't want to add back Low because that wants to get summoned off of her own effect, and like you could already use Saphira to potentially add stuff back. So I don't know how useful this one is. I could pretty easily see not playing this one. All right, and then we got a couple of continuous trap cards here. This one is Guardian of the Voiceless Voice. If a face-up monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, except ritual monsters, you can special summon one Skull Guardian from your hand or deck. Okay, and that's original Skull Guardian, not Voiceless Voice Guardian. Because if it could do either, it would say one Skull Guardian monster, but it just says one Skull Guardian. So that's just like vanilla Skull Guardian. So, which we're not trying to play in this deck, I don't think. You can send this face-up card to the graveyard, then target one ritual monster you control, gains attack equal to the combined original attack of other monsters currently on the field until the end of the turn. Can only use each effect of this card once per turn. It cannot activate more than one in the same chain. So yeah, given that the first effect is pretty useless, given that you're not playing vanilla Skull Guardian in this deck, you're just simply not doing it. The second effect will be the only one that's really that you can really use, and that effect is like fine. I don't know. I can't even really call it fine. Like, it's not a bad effect. Like, if it goes off and there's a lot of monsters on the field, then yeah, you can OTK, but I don't think relying on the situation of both that board state and having this card is worth playing this card. So I imagine you probably don't play this. Radiance of the Voiceless Voice, our last card we're going to take a look at here. It's a continuous trap card that says during the main phase you can activate one of these effects. Shuffle one late ritual monster, warrior, dragon, or one ritual spell from your hand or graveyard into the deck. And if you do, add to your hand or special summon one Voiceless Voice monster from your deck. Target cards your opponent controls up to the number of light ritual monsters, warrior, dragon you control. Destroy both this card and as many of the targeted cards as possible. There we go. That's a lot better. Yeah, I think both these effects are great. You'll probably just do the first effect on your turn, the second effect on your opponent's turn most of the time. Also worth noting is that Lo, I believe, did say that she can play a continuous spell or trap card from your deck face up, meaning that there is a lot of potential to have Radiance face up on your turn one, right? So that's why I wanted to point out the first effect seems particularly good during your turn, right? And then, of course, obviously the second effect, great disruption. So, yeah, cool. That's all the Voiceless Voice cards. So, all in all, Lo is obviously the cornerstone of the deck. She's great. Saphira, the effect monster version. Reread this again. Discard, send a ritual spell, add a light ritual monster from deck and graveyard in your hand. Banish. I think this card seems okay. I could see playing it, but I could also see not at the same time. Sorvis is the one that's kind of got me still, even after reading all of them. I think this is kind of one where you would need experience with the deck to know how good this card is in this deck, but I mean, I can see a world where it is definitely not too shabby. Again, when it comes to Voiceless Voice Saphira, and also, frankly, regular Saphira, I don't really think that either of these cards are good enough to make the cut, in my honest opinion. They just don't do enough. Regular Saphira especially is like, you know, it's only during the end phase that you get these effects. Voiceless Voice Saphira is like definitely better than that, but not by a whole lot. A lot of the timing requirements for its effects are still kind of weird and not optimal. Skull Guardian is, like I said before, another one of the cornerstones of the deck. You're always going to want to try to end with this on turn 1. Prayers is your ritual spell, so I imagine you play at least one copy of this. It also seems like a good card, you know, even beyond that. Sorvis, again, I think I would actually play a copy of this card to add and potentially get some more target protection. And again, does not actually seem like a horrible ritual monster to summon either for its actual effect. Barrier is very, very good. It's a searcher more than anything else, but also giving your stuff target protection and you know, protecting your low from being destroyed by battle is very good. Blessing is very whatever. I think this card kind of doesn't do anything. Guardian, I feel this card definitely doesn't do anything. You're not playing Vanilla Skull Guardian in this deck. I can't imagine you ever are. So even if you were, I don't think it would be... Like, this card would be the only reason to play Vanilla Skull Guardian, and it's like... it's still not even that good of a reason. But Radiance, on the other hand, I think you definitely almost always play this card, probably. So, okay. Now that we have looked at all the Voiceless Voice cards, let's take a look at a couple of OCG builds. I wanted to, in particular, look at the first builds from when this deck started being really meta-relevant to some of the latest builds that have been reported on Road of the King. So I think we're going to start with... is this the older one or the newer one? This is the older one. So this is when, yeah, Voiceless Voice first started showing up in the meta. Voiceless Voice is a new ritual deck that has produced some decent results in its debut. Lo, the Prayers of the Voiceless Voice is used to place Barrier of the Voiceless Voice from the deck to spell Trap. Then Barrier adds Saphira, Dragon Queen of the Voiceless Voice from deck to hand. Saphira is then discarded to send a Prayers from the deck to the graveyard and add Skull Guardian. Saphira's graveyard effect banishes itself to Ritual Skull Guardian by attributing Lo. Skull Guardian effect would add Sorvis, Dragon Sage from deck to hand. Then Lo would special summon itself from the graveyard. Sorvis could special itself from hand, and during the opponent's turn could special summon... Oh, I see. Okay, so you do just rituals... Oh, so you don't add... I got it. Okay. So I actually almost had the whole line kind of right. Again, this deck is kind of straight up in how you play it, but... So you don't actually add... I misspoke earlier. You don't actually add Ritual Sorvis for target protection. I thought that was weird because Barrier already has it. No, you add Effect Monster Sorvis, which lets you summon Ritual Sorvis during your opponent's turn. Yeah, it even says here, Voiceless Voice is a very linear strategy, but could be difficult to handle for those unprepared. Barrier the Voiceless Voice makes your light monsters become untargetable, while you control Low and a light monster, while Skull Guardian has the negate, and then Sorvis can negate a special summon. So, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty solid, you know, one-card line there. And looking at the main deck here, it's got pretty much everything you would expect to see for a build like this, right? Including 3 Diviner of the Herald. That's probably going to be your additional UR tag. Well, and also I think Ritual Sorvis is a UR too, so depending on how many of the Voiceless Voice cards end up being URs, this could potentially be a little bit of an expensive deck if you don't already have Diviner of the Heralds and Ritual Sorvis, but again, I guess at the time this video goes out, we know how expensive the deck is, but I don't at the time of recording it. Skull Guardian was confirmed to be a UR. There's no way Low isn't also a UR, but I can see a world where those are the only 2, honestly. I guess maybe Barrier might be a UR, but like the main continuous spell that you grab, but my guess is 2, maybe 3. I think Low is almost assuredly going to be a UR. I guess we'll see if the Barrier is or not. I'd be a little surprised if it was. I think this is probably going to be 2 URs, but again, we'll have to see. They might, I don't know. They might actually end up doing more because this is like the most competitive deck in the new pack. But I wanted to compare this build against a build from later in the meta, in the OCG meta. The last tournament report we saw, or meta report we saw, was from December. This one, if we scroll up, is from April. And you might be wondering, well, why didn't you pick one from sooner than April? That was still like, 4 months ago. That's because I think this is the last time Voiceless Voice really shows up as one of the most prominent decks in the OCG meta. I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit, but okay, so looking at this build, we are already noticing some differences here. For one, the ritual monsters themselves, the number of copies has been reduced down to 2 Skull Guardians and 1 Sorvis, as opposed to like 3 and 2. And from what I could tell from the majority of tournament topping lists, I think this seems to be a little bit more what you see people playing, right? So I guess that's good news if if this does end up being not so much of a budget deck, is that you don't necessarily need to max out on Skull Guardian. You could definitely get away with only one of these Sorvis as well. Still 3 Diviners, still 3 low. This one's also playing the Ritual Odd Eyes card, which is kind of cool. But I mean, otherwise the build is like pretty much the same. This one's on a Deer Servant package. I don't know how typical that becomes moving forward, but I guess that might also potentially be some UR attacks if you don't already own those cards. So where do I think Voiceless Voice stands in the Master Duel meta after looking at all of this? Well, in my opinion, I think that Voiceless Voice will see meta relevance, right? I think it will likely be a tiered deck. However, I kind of think it'll be tier 3. I think it's going to be pretty similar to when Unchained came into Master Duel, right? And we saw it, again, have some meta relevance, but not like hugely shake anything up. I kind of think the same is going to be true of Voiceless Voice, honestly. Now, granted, there were times in the OCG where this was like the second best deck behind Snake Eye, or considered to be one of the best decks in the meta, right? But there is one contender that kind of, I think, competes with this a lot, and that is going to be, Yubel. As good as the Skull Guardian is, having a big monster with over 4,000 attack points is kind of a liability in this meta. So the fact that this deck consistently ends on it kind of gives it a poor Yubel matchup. And, I touched on earlier how this meta report that we're looking at, right, is, I think, the last one that we saw Voiceless Voice featured prominently. And this is also, by no coincidence, the first meta report where Yubel is actually getting introduced into the meta and is being featured very prominently. This is the same point in time in which Phantom of Yubel came out, is when Voiceless Voice started to drop off, which again, I think the correlation there is pretty obvious. So I don't think that the existence of Yubel makes this a bad deck, but I think Yubel being very prominent in the meta does make Voiceless Voice more difficult to play in the meta. I mean, again, I think this will be a fine tier 3, maybe upper rogue, but I think probably a tier 3 deck. That I still don't know. I'm a little on the fence if I'm going to build it. It really does come down to how many URs I'm going to end up needing, but I'll probably go for it, honestly. I don't play that many ritual decks, so I'm kind of eager to try one out in the near future here. I mean, the near future being tomorrow. At the time of recording this, today at the time of this video going out. But anyway, I think either way I will be opening up some packs, so be sure to look out for that tomorrow. Well, tomorrow I'm doing something I think a little bit different. I'm not just opening packs, I also want to go through the pack itself and kind of break down like what all I think is worth crafting and how many copies of each of those cards. It's kind of something I want to do moving forward when a new pack comes out, so definitely stay tuned for that. But anyway, this is Hexlex. I am thinking that this is going to be the end of the video. I think there's something else I wanted to say. But no, we covered both of the Road to the King list, so no, I think we're good. Okay, never mind. Yeah, let's go ahead and move now to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Just want to give you a huge thanks for watching all the way to the very end of the video. Believe it or not, that is actually one of the best ways that you can support the channel, is by watching the videos in their entirety. But there are many ways in which you can support the channel if you are so interested. The names that you're seeing on screen here, I gotta give an extra special thanks to, because these are people who have chosen to either become a member on YouTube, which if you're interested you can do as well via the join button next to the subscribe button down there, or have signed up over on Patreon and become members there. Link to that is going to be in the description below. Without the support that is being offered by, again, all the people that you're seeing on screen right here, I would not be able to take the time to dedicate to uploading daily YouTube videos. So thank you so very much. But there are also other ways you can support as well. Again, link to the description below. If you like my deck tracker that you'll see in a lot of my videos, the Untapped Companion, you can download that for free, and if you use my affiliate link down there, then that also goes a long way towards supporting the channel. That's, again, free. So is subscribing here on YouTube. That's also free and a huge way to support. You can also check out Twitch, once again linked in the description below. Following and subscribing over there will not only support as well, but also give you notifications of when I go live if you want to catch some of the live streams. But really, no matter how you choose to support, it all adds up and it all definitely means the world. So thank you, each and every one of you. For now, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out. But more than that, I'm hoping that you have a fantastic day.